Go ahead, Mr. Austin. Introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing at the SBA.
So, good afternoon to all of you who have taken the time to join us today, and to the small businesses that were affected by the coronavirus. My heart goes out to you. Well, first of all, let me thank Tamara. It was very impressive, the leadership that you have demonstrated in making sure that this happens today. I was very impressed. And also I'd like to thank Paola Pierre for engaging the chamber membership. And I'd like to take a minute, if I could, to introduce my own family members who are on the call. I know they are going to challenge me with questions. I have my brother, Dr. Philip Austin, his wife, Magali Austin, and my youngest little sister, Michelle Pami Austin. And thank you also for joining, brothers and sisters. And before I talk about the programs, I just wanted to take 2 minutes to tell you a little bit about the Small Business Administration. I've been working with this organization for 30 years. I've been fortunate to work in different markets. So I worked in New York, the New York District Office, which is the largest of 68 district offices. I worked in Long Island for a year in a branch office that I managed, and I started my career in New Jersey. Ended up in Dallas by accident, but in retrospect, it was a very good move. It's a great market, as you may have heard. Companies are moving in. When the large company moves in, the suppliers, the small business suppliers follow. So from that perspective, I am in a better place than I was in New York City. The people are just better people to talk to. So a little bit about the Small Business Administration. I like to say that 30 years in government. The Small Business Administration is probably one of the smallest agencies in the federal government, but with the widest mandate in that they represent and the advocate and champion of the 30 million small businesses of the United States. And we have offices all over the country, of course. And we happen to have 2 offices in Florida, one in Miami and one in Jacksonville. And I'm saying that because after the disaster is over, if you're a small business owner and you need assistance, I want you to know that we're also here for you. And Miami happens to be one of the most productive offices in terms of lending. They do about over $1.5 billion in lending year after year. They have the largest portfolio of the AA firm in the United States. So all that to say that you're in good hands as a small business owner, and the chair of the Small Business Committee in the Senate happens to be in your market. It's Rubio. You have an issue with small business, you have a problem with government or whatever, you can always go to Rubio to help you out. So I have 2 critical programs that I like to discuss. One is the Economic Injury Loan Program. And this is a program that is managed directly from the government so that you're applying with the government. I just wanted to make sure you understand that this program is not managed by your bank, whereas the other program we'll be talking about, you need to go to your bank account and apply.
Okay, one second, Mr. Austin. So let's take a step back and talk about, there's 2 programs, right? Yes. There's one program administered directly by the SBA, and there's another program administered directly by the bank. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So the very first one is the Economic Injury Loan Program that is administered by the SBA. And I like to let you know a little bit about giving you the facts. So the loan is up to $2 million. The interest rate on that loan is 3.75%. If you're a private not-for-profit, the interest is 2.75%. The terms of the loan is 30 years to repay that debt. And there is a year deferment. So when you get your loan, you do not have to start paying that debt until a year after. You only pay the interest for a year.
Okay, I'm just going to repeat slowly so that everybody understands and has the time to take notes. And you just let me know if I missed anything. So again, I'm going to repeat, there's two programs, two programs, one administered by the SBA, one administered by the bank. The one that you're talking about right now is the one administered by the SBA called the Economic Injury Loan.
Correct.
You can get up to $2 million for that particular loan, 3.75 interest rate for regular companies, and 2.75 interest rate for non-for-profits, 30-year repayment terms. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And once you apply for this loan, there is one of the question is, I would like to consider an advance, a $10,000 loan advance. So what happens, you fill that out, you provide your bank and account number, and this is the first check you'll be receiving from the Treasury. It will be deposited directly to your account. And that $10,000 will be forgiven. So think of it as a grant, the first $10,000 you'll be getting. And to give you a better sense, you fill out the application, they determine how much money, and that's the SBA underwriter will be doing that, not yourself. You're going to provide information, and based on the information provided, the loan officer will determine how much money you should be applying for. So as a good example, let's say they determine that 50,000 will be the right number for you to help you. So they would have given you 10,000 up front, and that 10,000 will be forgiven. It'll be a debt. So you will only get a check of 40,000 deposited in your account after closing.
So when you apply online, so for this particular loan, the economic injury loan, you go to the SBA.gov and you apply for that. And subsequently, you will receive a $10,000 advance. Is that automatic for everybody?
It is automatic for everybody once you fill out that part of the application, and that part was not available until last Monday. So if someone had already applied, they can always go back to the new application, give their reference number, and just go straight to that page to answer 3 questions, which is loan numbers, account number, and something else that has to do with the bank.
And that 10,000 we can consider that as a grant. You will not need to reimburse that 10,000.
That's correct. And the thing, people, we're getting a lot of calls, Tamara. People are saying, okay, I put in my application, I didn't get that money you spoke about. Well, remember, when you put in an application, you have to assume that about 24 million small business will be applying, and all the loans go to one single office. So you imagine what the queue looks like. So when you're in a queue, you're not going to get a check because nobody knows nothing. But once that loan package is submitted to an underwriter, the first thing they will do is to ask the Treasury to send you a check. Now they look at your application, you are denied, you still keep that check. And you may say, but that's impossible. Yes, it is possible. The government wants to put money in the marketplace. Things are not going too well. So Washington is dying to put money in your hand right away. So if you become ineligible, you should have applied, you keep your $10,000 anyway. So it's your money. Now the underwriter looks at the application, looks at it, and determine an amount. On that amount, into closing, you can also argue with the underwriter, but let's say you agree, that money minus the 10,000 will be deposited to your account.
Okay, so is there negotiation that can happen at that moment in time?
Correct. So finally, your application is approved. Someone will be able, the underwriter that is, will be able to give you a call. Probably the first time you get a call from our office, or a lot of emails, congratulations, you've been approved. So it's almost a closing where negotiation can take place. They have determined you should be getting 40,000, but you need 60,000 to carry you for the next couple of months. So that can be argued. So there is a little bit of negotiation.
Okay.
Once that ends, the closing can be done over the phone. then the funds are deposited in your account. 1 year, you don't have to repay. There is a deferment of a year, and the terms are 30 years. So if you want to extend it on a small loan where you're paying maybe $50 a month for 10 years, who wants that, right? But you have 10 years to repay that debt.
30 years?
30 years to repay.
30 years. Okay. So we're going to allow people to ask questions in a little bit, but I just want to get the big picture idea and then we can go back. So first, this was the Economic Injury Loan Program. Again, people go to sba.gov to apply for it. Everybody gets an automatic $10,000. You don't have to repay it. Once they call you and you want to start, negotiating for more, you can. The max that any small business can receive is $2 million, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we'll come back to this, but let's keep going with the big picture. And then the next program, if you want to talk about the next program that is administered directly at the local banks.
That's correct, Tamara. The other program is known as the 3 Ps, PPP, Paycheck Protection Program. So it's an interesting program. You can apply. You have to go to your bank account to apply. You no longer apply with the SBA, even though on the SBA's website, there is an initial application that you want to fill out. You can take that application to your bank, and the bank may say, I have sufficient information. You don't have to do mine over. Or the bank will give you their own application, which probably is similar to ours. So you can actually go on our site or the treasury.gov, even better. They have a lot of updated information. You can pull that application, make a copy, fill it out. Monday morning, you take it to your bank, an account. Important, the word account. No bank. If you don't have an account with a bank or a relationship, you're going to be wasting your time. So, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about the program. So you can apply for up to $10 million. The loan is 100% guaranteed by the full faith and good credit of the United States through SBA. The maturity is 2 years, no collateral requirement, no personal guarantee requirement. It's an interesting one. You get a deferment of 6 months after you get the loan. And those loans, supposedly, that's what the Treasury would want. They would want the bank to process these loans within a day. I don't see it being possible, given the number of loans. I spoke to someone, we started receiving application. The bank starts receiving application last Friday, and I can tell you within few hours, Bank of America here, I think they have branches everywhere, they were already at $10 billion in submission, not in approval, but application that they had received for their customers, from their customers. So the program is moving forward. And we are fortunate, as I was saying to Tamara, at some point, she will allow Jeff Lozama to speak, only because on Monday morning, he went to the bank, he applied, and basically he could not believe the process. I think they just tell him the application, they're going to change it, they're going to put the name of his bank on it, but it's very much like the SBA application. He couldn't believe how short it was to be filled out. And he went through the process, because remember, a large portion of that loan will be considered a grant. It will be forgiven. So remember, the intent of this loan is to put money in your hands so you can retain your employees. So think of a business who is about to let go their employees, they can apply for the loan, and most of that loan will be forgiven. There is a portion that is strictly for payroll, and anything associated with payroll would be retirement. If you pay retirement or part retirement for your employees, if you pay insurance for your employees, all these costs can be considered payroll costs, and almost all of it will be forgiven. But if you have other expenses, such as your mortgage, your rent, and other things, I would recommend that you apply for the other program better.
So,
Go
so
ahead.
before we're going to give the floors for questions, but I have another general question. So you talked to us about the two programs. Can somebody apply for both?
Absolutely.
So
you can apply for both programs, with the only difference they're going to be talking to each other. So
okay.
if you try to apply for the same thing in both programs, it's not going to work. Because
Okay.
if you apply for 100,000 as an example with the bank will consult with SBA. If you had applied 100,000 and luckily, you had received your money already, you're not going to receive another 100,000 from the bank if it was for the same thing.
For the same thing, but
Correct.
you could potentially get, I'm going to make numbers up here. You could potentially get $1 million for economic injury for working capital, and then you can get another 1 million for the PPP program.
And that 1 million, let us suppose it's just for payroll, that's going to be forgiven in its entirety. So that would be perfect.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so before we get to Mr. Jeff Lozama, I also want to make note that we have Madame Paola Pierre that's on. She's the Haitian American Chamber of Commerce of Florida chairwoman. And it was very important for me to have her here because, as you know, there's a lot of underserved communities that will not be able to fully take part in these programs. And one of them will be the Haitian community. So I'm happy that she's here, because our intent will be to make sure that that community is fully aware of these programs. So Paola, thank you for being on.
Thank you, Tamara, for giving us the opportunity. I have my board members online. I have some of my members as well. They are small businesses, they apply for the program. And then we have a few questions, really. Thank you, Mr. Austin, for taking the time on a Saturday evening to be with us. We appreciate it, thank you. Even if it's virtually, thanks. My question is, I have a question is there a way, we can, what's the basic requirement for members, for any small business to be qualified for those loans?
Good question, Paola. The first thing I want to clarify, if you're not a US citizen, if you do not have a green card, if you don't have a visa that allow you to work and have a business in the United States, you would automatically be ineligible. So we're fighting the same war here because you have a lot of undocumented Mexican Americans, Mexicans who make a lot of contribution to the economy here because they still pay their taxes like everybody else. But yet, speaking to the Fort Worth Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, they just could not understand why is it that they couldn't apply for those loans. So I needed to simply tell them, I do not write the rules. This is way beyond me. But I know that if you're not a resident, a green card, citizen, or you have a special visa, I think the EB visa or something like that, you cannot apply. That's the first condition. The second condition is you have businesses that are ineligible. But we need to remind our folks who do not have documents, unfortunately, they will not be eligible for this program. But for example, in my market, I tell you, I'm sure you have the same, maybe more micro-lenders in your market than we have here. Right. A couple of micro-lenders in my area work very closely with the undocumented community, and they would actually, they make loans at low interest rate. And I can see their articles all the time because the SBA funds them as well. So they cannot use the SBA funds to make loans to undocumented. But remember, those micro lenders are very wealthy because they raise a lot of funds from banks and from foundations. So they make a lot of loans to undocumented people here. I hope it is the same in Florida.
Okay, the other one, we talk about undocumented, about this, but what about if the taxes, the financials, let's say I didn't do my taxes in 2017 as a small business or 2018, what proof do you need, would the SBA need to make it?
Again,
so they have to get those things together,
no,
basically.
It's not asked. The application, I know that Tamara can talk about the very first one, the EIDL, economic injury. The application doesn't ask a lot of these informations.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so the application is so simple. Again, they just want to put so much money. I mean, not that they want to put so much money. They want to put money in the marketplace to make it work. It's not working right now. So they have reduced the requirements of paper. Initially, you had to provide personal financial statement, income tax return, so much information, your history, the tax, your FICO score, they pull that automatically. Even that has been lowered. I think they are looking at, they were looking at like 479, I think. People were being turned down for 570 before. And there are so many people not being turned down right away that they decided to bring it way down. So right now, 91% of people who apply for the economic injury I'm talking about get approved. They just want to put money out. None of these things that you mentioned, Paula, are required. None.
I have one more, and then I'll pass it on to everybody else. They are dying to speak with you. The government is giving this money out. As a Chamber of Commerce, where do you see a wall? Because what I'm looking at is like, you give the money, but at the same time, they need technical assistance, meaning like, overseeing what they're doing, monitoring their progress, the business, because they said 1 out of 4 businesses, after disaster don't make it, maybe more now because it's taken so long. Where do you see us as being a facilitator to those businesses?
I will give you the answer. As you know, we have our own resource partners in every marketplace. So the required people, I don't know whether you know about the glucose score, the service score, retired executive, 13,000 nationwide. In my district, I have 150. I don't know how many. Miami must have a lot more. So they've been trained. They've been trained on this program so that when they see a client asking questions, putting together financial, no longer necessary. So the small business with his assistant can always go to a SCORE chapter. They can always go to a small business development center. They can always go to the women business center. So we have our own resource network, Paula. But wouldn't it be nice? Would it be nice for the chamber to be able to provide information to a lot of us who never integrated, who don't even speak the language of the country, even though we have great businesses. So we see that here in Dallas, where we have a large community of Mexicans coming in, they have large businesses, large franchise, but some of them tell you off the bat, I don't speak English. Can I speak to someone who speaks my language? So that's where I see, why the chamber has a role to play. When I go to chambers of commerce, the ethnic chambers of commerce, that's what I tell their leadership. You people, when somebody goes to SBDC and go to SCORE, what are the chances they will find someone who talks Vietnamese?
Very minimal.
Wouldn't it be nice that you do the same for the Haitian community? And that is why, Paula, you can apply for a loan with the SBA. I'm sure you know that. You can apply on any of these 2 programs, try to take advantage somehow with the numbers you will provide to at a minimum get the grant of the 10,000 that I spoke about. And you can use that 10,000 to have someone on site, to talk to the people who walk in and say, I need help. I need someone to take a look at my financial, as you put it. And it doesn't have to be only now, Paula, because after this is all over, small business will have issues. They're going to continually need assistance from people like you and Tamara, who are well-seasoned business owners and could assist them. So it'd be great if the chamber can apply for this program. As I said, you'll be surprised. It will take you no more than 30 minutes to fill out the application. 30 minutes. And if you get denied, you get your 10,000 anyway, and you can put it for the best use of the community. So I would urge you to do that just for me, because I like the chamber to be well funded to do the work that they would like to do as well. And I think that's an opportunity to apply and do that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So now I'll pass it on to my members, my board members first. They're on.
Paola, speaking of the application, why don't we ask Mr. Lozama that has actually done an application to walk us through the process?
Correct.
Very good. That's the other program, not the economic injury.
Okay. Jeff, are you on?
Yes, I am on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. So which one did you apply for, the economic injury or the PPP?
I have applied for both, Tamara, and I want to
Okay.
thank you again for your leadership on this. And Herbert, it's so good to see you, and thank you for being a wealth of information to all of us here today. I personally filled out the PPP yesterday morning, and it was the easiest application I've filled out as a business owner. It
Where
took
did you
me
fill it
no
out,
more.
Jeff? Tell everyone.
Well, now I'll tell everyone, my bank called me first and let me know about the opportunity. They even sent me the link, and I went straight through my bank. I bank with Bank of America. The application was on their portal, was on their system, and it's a very easy, streamlined application. Uh, Once you enter your credentials as name of business, your EIN number, it gets into the actual average total of your payroll for 2019. I thought in myself that they were going to ask for a bunch of questions, Tammy. I went to my accountant, my bookkeeper. I asked for all of my financials for last year, thinking that they were going to ask about that. I called my payroll company to have them send me a report of last year. I had all my documents ready until I found out that it was a very one-liner. What's your average payroll? I put that in, and the system computes for you the amount that you would be receiving. And that's how easy it was. So that was,
Jeff,
yes.
Prince on the line. Go ahead and finish. I can just give my own input as well.
Okay. And then and that was it. And so the PPP was done.
Jeff, when you applied on Bank of America online, you're saying that right then and there, did they say you are approved, or they just gave you an amount? What was the response once you filled out the application from Bank of America?
A confirmation number came from Bank of America, acknowledging, confirming that you have successfully completed the application.
Okay.
That was sent to you. Now, what I found out, and the question I want to ask Herbert, people have feared that the banks are going to be very selective as to who gets access to this PPP, because I think banks are asking that you are an account holder or have some credit with the bank. Not credit in terms of in terms of loans, but at least you have history with the bank. Can you speak to that?
I would love to, because I get the call. So yesterday morning, program started very early, and a client who has a 17 years relationship with the deposit relationship with Bank of America, happens to be the same bank, couldn't get a loan because basically they go on the site and they would tell you yes to apply or no, we don't qualify. And the client could not understand 17 years of putting at least 100,000 average in the bank every month. And for a bank like that to tell her, because she doesn't have a loan with the bank or a credit card with the bank, she couldn't qualify. This is all over the place. That lady who is a business owner, instead of going about her business, she called every senator, of course, 2 of them here. She called a congressman. She called the media. It was in the news yesterday. So basically, if you don't have a relationship, like Jeff is sitting at his house on Friday, he got a call from the bank. So obviously, there is only $349 billion to be spent. So keep this in mind. The earlier you apply, you're better off. Because what the bank is saying, they are calling people like Jeff, who keep a great account, who has a great relationship with them, and a person like me, who is a little guy, who can only have one of their credit cards with a maximum that I can spend, then I don't get that call. And I have to go and almost beg because they have 2,000 people they have already called. So that's exactly what's happening right now. We have a list of banks. We have a list of banks that we've already identified that we're going to send to headquarters so that they can do whatever they can, because I think it's so unfair. You know, I've already told small business, unless you have an account relationship, you're not going to get a loan with any bank here, at least in my market. But this the bank is saying to a person who has a deposit relationship, you need a credit relationship. Otherwise, I'm not going to help you. That's what's happening.
I can answer that. This is Princeton, guys. I have a relationship with 4 different banks, and the most I have is with Bank of America, because I didn't have a credit, though I have a loan with them, but the loan is not current, it's already paid off. They will not accept my application, even though I may have more relationship with the other bank, like Chase and Region Bank. Because I have loans with them, they were able to accept my application, but I just choose to go with one, which was Chase. I believe what you say is 100% correct. It doesn't matter how much money you have at Bank of America. If you don't have a relationship as far as loans with them, they do not take your application for some reason. I just don't know why. But since I have other relationships with other banks, I was able to go swiftly and go with them, and I was able to fill my application without any issue.
Now, Herbert, what happens to somebody that has, for example, thank you for sharing that, Prince. So what happens if I have a Bank of America account, I don't have a credit card, I don't have a loan with them, that's the only bank I bank with, what happens to somebody like me?
Your next step is to call the local office and find out, request a list of they owe you that. Let me have a list. If you ask anybody, can you recommend a bank? The answer is, I cannot do that. I can give you a list. So let's find on the site, sba.gov/local assistance. You go to the Miami office, you can pull a resource guide. The last 2 pages are all the banks that participate in the program. So you may have to walk to another bank. Keeping in mind that if you don't have a relationship at all, it is almost impossible. I'll give you a sense. We have about 2,000 banks who make SBA loans. Now there is an additional 1,800 who had never wanted to work with the government, who are now applying to become SBA lenders, and they were very specific. So I can help my clients who have been asking me about people. Only $349 billion. It may look like a lot of money for us, for a country, but that money is going fast. Yesterday by noon, Bank of America had already booked $10 billion worth of loan, just one single bank. So one of my recommendations is please find yourself a bank quickly. If I can give you again information on how to get our resource guide from Miami, so you can see the list of banks. You can request from them, as I have access to mine, to banks that are active in their marketplace. Banks like BBVA, Compass, I don't know if you have them, very active with SBA. Wells Fargo, one of the largest SBA lender in the United States. If you have those branches. But they were saying the same thing to their customers. Last week, people were calling me on Friday because they go to Wells Fargo and Chase, and both of them were telling them, you got to come back on Monday because we're really not ready today. At least in this market, that's what was happening on Friday. But I'm sure they're going to reopen their door to the small business on Monday. So it's not as easy as I thought it was going to be, because banks are picking and choosing because they know that the money is limited, but what they probably don't know is the Treasury has already announced, the Secretary of Treasury, that if all the money is expanded very quickly, they will have another stimulus package to put more money into the program. But the banks want to use the 349 very quickly.
I think, thank you for that. I think Steve Pica, you have a question?
No, I don't.
Okay, I thought I saw okay. There's somebody that has a question. Anybody has a question?
Yeah, I have a question for Jeff.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Jeff, with my application, especially for the PPP, I didn't have to submit any information. And the only thing I got was a confirmation, and then the banker will call me. Is that how the process was for you, or did you get to fill out all your 941, all the information that you need?
No, it was a streamlined application. We didn't have to do that at all. It just gives you a confirmation number, and that was it. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hey, Tamara, this is Dale Joseph. I'm on the line.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Just want to chime in on the bank side. Obviously, I've been working with my bank on this.
Del, do you want to introduce yourself to people that might not know who you are?
Absolutely. My name is Dale Joseph. I used to be the past chair of the Haitian Chamber, and now I'm based in Washington, D.C. With a major bank where I lead the public finance side for the bank. And we've put together a task force to work on this PPP. And here in DC, and trying to support the marketplace. And basically, what I'll say on the bank side, and we can take the conversation offline for questions about the banks and how we are treating those applications. But this program was ready to accept application on Friday, but until Thursday night, we did not get final guidance from the SBA. And they are calling it interim guidance. So if you think about it, if you get the guidance on Thursday night, then on Friday you have to open the doors and start accepting applications. It's not an easy thing to do because you have to have your credit policy in place ready to be processing those things. So in my institution right now, we are expecting to start accepting application early next week. So that's what we'll be doing. And the way that Bank of America started their process, because the bank, they still have to do the KYC, know your customer, AML, anti-money laundering. So by them saying that, okay, you need to have a credit relationship with them, that's just a way trying to funnel that. So they were ahead of the curve from that standpoint. So the banks, I think they were part of the problem the last time. I think they are trying to redeem themselves to this process and trying to be supportive of what's going on. But as Herbert has been saying, it's going to be limited money, and you just have to get in line as soon as possible to relationships that you may have on the portal. But one thing I'll say as well is through the act, the SBA has allowed other lenders to provide this. Credit union can start participating in this. So the chamber will have to play a role there in finding out who those banks where you do not have relationships that will take applications and try to get the word out there and also get it out in Creole so our community can benefit from this. So again, I can take this offline if you have any specific questions about the banking system and how do you approach this. But thank you for allowing me to talk about this tonight.
Yes, thank you. So Herbert, is there a way that I don't know if you know this answer or not, but is there a process of which bank gets how much money and does Bank of America get like 15% and this bank gets 20 and that one, do you have an idea of what that process is like? Does it matter? Does it not matter? What?
As I do, Tammy, it's first come, first serve for the 349 billion.
Period.
So, yes. For example, Bank of America is probably way ahead of the curve. And the speaker before, he is right. Up until afternoon of Thursday, no bank had received any direction or guidance. There was no protocol. I spoke to you on Thursday. I did tell you the same. I couldn't believe it. The banks are waiting anxiously, and SBA doesn't have the staffing to support that kind of program. Couldn't get it out on time, and the Treasury had determined on Friday, and that's exactly why Wells Fargo and Chase were telling their customers, "We're not ready. You got to come back on Monday." But there is first come, first serve, Tamara. If Bank of America has a way to use all the money, they probably will. So other banks want to get involved. 1,800 banks are trying. And so every bank wants to come in, whether it's a credit union, to help their customers, very specific. I want to join so I can help my customers. I don't want to lose them to other banks.
Okay, great. Any other questions?
Tamara, can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead, Steve.
Okay. What if you're not impacted by this virus? And I'll even talk about my own situation. I'm busier than ever. I'm a CPA, so I'm working now this time of year anyway. This creates more work, and I've had a lot of just good things that happened in the last 2 months where I'm not impacted whatsoever. I mean, I can't go to happy hour, which that's the only thing that's really bothering me. This is a joke, by the way. But and then people say, well, why don't you apply for that $10,000? And right away, they'll send it to you. Just send the application. I don't, isn't this for if you're not impacted, you're really not supposed to be applying, correct? I mean, that's a general rule.
I mean, it's a matter of conscience, Steve. I mean, why would you apply for something that you feel, you shouldn't be? Like your position, you're in a better position. The coronavirus affected almost everybody, but there is a handful of industries that were not affected. It works best for you because you get the customers. Now, if somebody can argue, come on, Steve, you still can argue, and you start thinking,
it's not only somebody, it's everybody. I mean, everybody's just kind of said, oh, just apply. I go, well, I mean, that's really not what it's for. But I know you see this all the time, but they're going to get tons of applications that may or may not. I don't know if I don't know how they're going to underwrite it and qualify it, but I would imagine they got a tough job to make that assessment.
Yeah, in your case, it would be an easy assessment to make because the program is designed for people who are affected and who can prove to the numbers. Up to January, my sales were 100,000. Coronavirus come, my sales are now 20,000. And you can back it up with documents if required.
Right, but I could apply for that. I could apply for the SBA loan and get 10 grand up front. My application gets denied. I don't have to pay it back. I mean, that
is the beautiful part of it. But with your conscience, Steve, you got to live with it.
Yes.
Right. Other people could have used the money, not you, Steve. So
correct. Yes, I agree. I agree.
You're going to be denied because you are ineligible to begin with. You get $10,000 that you really don't need, and you're going to live with it for the next 30, 40 years,
I'm not disagreeing with you. That's why I'm bringing it up. That's why I'm bringing it up.
I know people who have no conscience and who say, well, I'm going to apply. I said to a gentleman earlier today, you have a church, you're not eligible. He says, but about the 10,000. I said, well, you can apply. I bet you get it, but you're going to be living with your conscience, knowing that I told you, you're not eligible to apply. And somebody's going to be looking at that application a little bit more carefully, Steve. They're going to tell you, Steve, you are ineligible to begin with, and maybe they can pull that application on the side. You never know what happens. Somebody calls me earlier, what if I take the money from the government? Since there is no collateral requirement, so they don't have my collateral, there is no personal guarantee requirement. So what if I apply and I don't pay for the loan? And my response was, well, I don't think you want to do that because what you don't know is it never ends. I know people who are still paying debt with the Treasury. Every check that comes in, whether it's your income tax check return, whether it's whatever payment, is garnished forever until you pay that debt. So it's hard to try to cheat the government, that way. But that would be my advice to a friend. Apply and get the 10,000. Let's get it and go to Côte d'Azur and have some fun on the beach or something.
We have a question from Jean Belizel. Go ahead.
Hi.
We're having a hard time hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, better.
So the issue is, this is a government program. So one of the things, and again, I work for another a super regional bank. We're launching this program actually this week, and one of the things we're telling our clients is a couple of things. One, to everybody's point, this is, the banks are really prioritizing their clients. So if there's any money left, Then after that, if somebody comes in and asks, maybe, but the priority are the bank's clients. End of story. Two, this is all online. You may not get requests for documentation now, but it's going to come back. They're going to come back and ask you for documentation. So your documentation needs to be in order. Three, and this is very important, at some point in time, there may be audits. This is a federal government program. They're going to go back and check, and if there's any fraud like anything else, the government will find out and they will confiscate, they will get their money back. So people definitely need to be careful with applying and just making sure that everything is legit, your documentation is in place, and you have no problem. And fourth and finally, one of the things we're telling our clients, this is creating a little bit of a cottage industry of people who are telling businesses they can help them. Some of it is fraudulent, and this is one of the things we have to be careful with, and we're prepared to tell our members, like when they don't apply to the Bank of America's, be careful, because there are going to be people out there telling them, oh yeah, I can get you the money, but you got to pay me $2,400. Today, I heard somebody today that they're charging their customers $2,500 to help them with some of the applications. So these are some of the things that, I also sit on the board of the Haitian American Chamber of Commerce, and these are some of the pointers and advice that we're giving our members to be careful of, because after this, there's going to be some consequences.
Yeah. What do you have to say about that, Herbert? About people?
Good advice. I was talking about conscience, but that's even better, because eventually they're going to pull files. Well, the FDIC will come after the bank in a way, take a look at the files, because they're taking absolutely no risk. So they can actually approve any loans that they want for any amount that they want, because they have no skin in this game at all. Normally the SBA requires that they pay a fee for a loan. SBA is forgiving that. So the bank has absolutely not a penny to spend on this loan. They're going to be collecting money on the contrary. So they may make mistake. They may decide, I'm going to let that application go through because, it's not my problem. But when the regulators come in and look afterwards, and I'm sure that's going to happen eventually, you don't want to be caught in that process.
And I want to say too that I saw, Herbert, that in the literature that I've been reading, that if you do help because some customers are going to need help, some clients are going to need help, some clients are going to be very confused with all of the language, even though it might be easy to go through. I did read somewhere that you can be an agent for a customer to help them fill out the application. And the agent is the list of who an agent can be is very specific. An attorney, an accountant, an officer of the company. There's that's not getting paid by the company right now. There's different requirements, but those agents can get paid by the bank once the loan gets approved. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, I do. And you're way ahead of the curve always, as always, Tammy. And the list, that's what the list read that way. Who can be an agent? An agent is an authorized representative and can be an attorney, an accountant, a consultant, someone who prepares an applicant's application for financial assistance and is employed and compensated by the applicant, someone who assists a lender with originating, disbursing, servicing, liquidating, or litigating SBA loans, a loan broker, or any other individual entity representing an applicant.
Somebody needs to put their phone on mute, please.
And an agent fee will be paid out of lender fee. Lender will pay the agent, and agent may not collect any fee from the applicant. So the bank will pay the fee. Yes, you're right.
So if we know that, I think it's our responsibility for the leaders in the community, in all the communities, to say to people that might say, wow, I need help, to say, don't worry, the bank will pay the agent.
Correct.
So that we can eliminate the fraud right from the beginning.
That's correct.
Yeah, Tamara, it's Dell again. So what will happen there is it's going to be with the non-traditional lenders for the SBA, because all the major banks, like Jean Belizier just said, his bank, my bank, we are not going to pay agents to help clients to fill out those. It's just that the way that the banks are structured. So it's going to have to be non-traditional lenders. And at the chamber, we need to find out who those will be so they can assist our clients. But don't expect that the fees that the major banks are collected, that's going to be paid any agent, because that's just not part of their process.
Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know.
And you can find out from the Miami office or the Jacksonville office, the new banks coming into the program who've never done an SBA loans and who are going to need help with agents and who are willing to pay the agent as well.
Do you think that at some point, if it gets too complicated and there's too much of a bottleneck and people are not getting their money, do you think at some point it's a possibility that the government could say, you know what, these banks, Wells Fargo, Bank United, Bank of America, all the big guys, I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to do this. Could that happen? I know we're in unprecedented times, but could that happen if people, you know, it's been 2 weeks, 3 weeks and nothing is moving?
It's interesting conversation I had with the media yesterday. So I told them when they were complaining, Washington has to do something, you know, and I said, you know, one thing to keep in mind, these banks are private sector banks. We see those very powerful board of directors and that sort of thing. If we start to meddle with private sector, suddenly we become what you so-called a socialist country, right? Like, you know, people will start to argue, okay, what's this? The government is controlling everything we're doing. We have the right to have our own standard operating procedure and say, well, we're not going to make loans to anybody. I see that the right way. I mean, I know businesses will be affected by it, but every bank has the right to make their own decision. Right now, we have 1,800 banks, I said, who are trying to join in, who never wanted to touch government. They would prefer to turn down your loan instead of considering a guarantee from the government. Just imagine. But those are the decision of the executive of the bank. I don't want to participate in SBA program, right? So I don't know how much, if they can put pressure on these banks. I know that I am required to provide lists of banks when a client calls to say, I cannot get a loan with my bank even though I have a 17 years relationship. We will be providing the names of these banks. I already have a list of 2. Hopefully at some point, every district office and 68 of us start to have lists. I'm very sure the treasurer and the president will have a meeting with these banks and say, you know, guys, you have to be, I mean, that's the way I put it. Maybe because I'm Haitian, I have a heart. I've been saying to banks, you have to be morally responsible. You have to be, you know, socially responsible. You are obligated to some extent to help people in this phase of their business. The cause I'm hearing is, if you don't help me today, I'm going to shut down my business. It makes you want to cry for the small businesses, especially in the restaurant business. You're hearing people calling, not the owner, but somebody calling on their behalf. They have lost all strength. They cannot even make a call. And for them to know that they can walk to a bank, for the bank to say, you know what, I know you have a deposit relationship with me, but I cannot make a loan to you. I think that is so sad, from my perspective at least. But those banks have no heart. They're just looking at the dollars, I guess.
Okay, so we have a couple people that are asking some questions. So we're going to go with Digital Pixels. You had a question about the Paycheck Protection Program.
Yes, my name is Stanley Lloyd, and I'm a Harkoff member. And the question is to Mr. Austin. I've been listening to several other mediums in terms of the Paycheck Protection Program. And I just want to get a clarification from you, and maybe it's a misunderstanding on my behalf. I think you mentioned that most of it will be forgiven. And it is my understanding that it will be only the first 8 weeks of the program, or at least when the loan is submitted, the employees that you have on your payroll for that 8 weeks after it's submitted, and 2.5% of your operating expense would be forgiven. So could you expand on that, please? Because I think I understood you to say all of it would be forgiven, and that's not my understanding.
The payroll piece, I think about 75%, when I say almost all of it, it's a big chunk of that payroll portion of it. So, and you're right, that's what the document says, exactly the way you put it. But I'm saying, I'm sure almost 75% of that payroll piece that you're applying for, because what you're doing in essence, you want money so you can keep your employees, right? 8 weeks of origination, and that's what you're applying for.
Yes, but I mean, there are situations where dependent, I believe this paycheck is really a 24-month, 2-year loan to be paid back in 2 years. So in essence, what I've got or what I've heard is the fact that, you know, you can either apply, I mean, you can apply for both, the injury loan and the paycheck. And of course, you as a business owner will determine which of them is more practical to you based on the terms of payment and based on the purpose at that point in time. But I mean, be as it may, they still only going to factor in the 8 weeks and the 2.5%. Now, obviously, from I guess all the bankers on this call, I'm a former banker too, to realize that a 30-year loan versus an 18 months repayment loan is certainly more advantageous for when you're applying for those two loans. So I gather that, you know, obviously, and you do get some form of payroll protection in the injury loan also. It's just a matter, I don't think you get to the extent that you would get if in fact you're looking for most of that portion to be forgiven. So I guess it'll be the determination as to which of the two that you'd want to go with. That's my understanding.
And we have a banker on the line, but I will tell you that if initially when the legislation was written, the maturity was 7 to 10 years. It is only 2 days ago. It's only 2 days ago they come up with 2 years, and I will tell you there is a reason for it. The reason is simple. They want that money to be forgiven, most of it, because there is no way in the world you can repay a debt in 18 months because you have a 6-month deferment. If you have $1 million loan and you're saying, well, only 500,000 will be forgiven, you're actually saying to me that you will be able to pay 500,000 in a year and a half. That's impossible almost. You know, your monthly payment will be much too high for you to continue running your operation. So the intent of this program is to put a lot of forgiveness money into your hands so that whatever debt you have to carry, you'll be able to pay it in a year and a half.
Okay.
And the banker can talk to that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Dell. So I can chime in on this in the way that we are looking at this at the bank. For the PPP, the bulk of that will be forgiven. So the way we size up the loan on the front end is ask the client to look at your payroll for the last 12 months and see what the average monthly is. So based on the average monthly, we times that 2.5 times. So that's the size of the loan that we will give you. So once you have that loan, you have till June 30th to just take a look at 8 weeks of your payroll. So what's the equivalent of those 8 weeks is, and we will compare that to the loan size that we give you. The size of the 8 weeks will be automatically forgiven. So that's the way that the approach is. There will be, if there is something that's left over, then we amortize that at 1% over the remaining 2 years.
Del.
So
Yeah,
that's what. Yeah.
There's also another factor that you need to bring to the table is the fact that even after that 8 weeks of period has expired, and assuming that you kept your employees, you didn't fire anybody, you still have to go and show and prove to the bank or maybe to SBA or whomever that you have used those funds appropriately. So there is a second phase of actually doing an application to prove that you've used those money before they will be forgiven.
That's absolutely correct. And hopefully some of the questions that we got, well, what if we had laid off people? Can we bring them back so we can hire them and keep them under that payroll? And the Act has provided for that in terms of rehiring. So yeah, there is a little bit of calculation and planning that takes place there before you size up the loan and see how much will be forgiven. But it is expected at least 75%, if you do everything right, 75% of the loan that you take on the front end will be forgiven.
Del, I have a question. So before, when we first started talking, we said that at some point you can go to the banker and say, hey, banker, I need more than this. And so assuming, just giving an example, assuming that the business did not apply for the economic injury loan and only applied for the PPP, is there going to be a point where I can go to you as my banker and say, thank you for the 8 weeks of payroll, but I also need a little bit more for working capital? Will that opportunity take place at a large institution for the PPP program?
And to clarify, Tammy, when I said that, I was only talking about the government program.
Which is what, the economic injury?
The economic injury, yeah, where it's a direct loan, where you're talking to an SBA employee, a federal employee, and you're calling them, and there is a little bit of room for negotiation from what I heard from that office.
Got it.
The bank loan, I'm not so sure.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, so on the bank loan, it's called the payroll protection program for a reason. So it's specifically for payroll and the benefits associated with payroll. So there will not be a working capital component. There is a component in there for debt payment on the interest that you pay on mortgages and things like that, but it's not intended for working capital.
Okay, there's two people that have a question, but I just wanted to just ask a question while we're on the PPP program. A big question that everybody's been asking is, when you do the calculation online or at the branch, whatever way the institutions are going to do it, can independent contractors be a part of the payroll calculation?
On the bank side, I'll let Herbert chime in, but until the Act came out last Thursday night, it was intended to include independent contractors, but now, no, they are not included. They can apply on their own under the PPP, but you cannot include them as part of your payroll numbers.
Hey, that's what I read too. What do you have to say, Herbert?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. All right, we're gonna go to Jeff. Jeff had a question, and then we'll go to Tessa. Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, all right, thank you. Herbert, on the applications, there were four categories or 4 boxes to check for the use of the money. One of them was payroll, the other one was utilities, the other one was mortgage, and the last one I don't recall. How do we check? What do we check on those 4 boxes? Not to affect the disaster loan program that is a secondary program.
I'll let the banker chime in.
So Jeff, I mean the categories. So you have the benefits that's associated with the payroll. You have the interest component. To the extent, let's see, which are the utilities? Maybe that's what you are referring to. Then you can have some of the utilities you can include as part of that calculation as well. But it has to be over the what we call the covered period, starting from March through the date that you are applying for this loan.
Okay, and my second question was to Herbert. I am on the mailing list with the SBA, so I do get a lot of information from the SBA on their resources. And this PPP application The SBA had sent a copy of it for us to kind of take a look at it as a sample. There is an I guess there is a link directly with the SBA for the PPP. Do you necessarily have to go through your financial institution, or can you apply directly with SBA?
Under the PPP, you have to go to a bank, unless that, again, is a moving target that changes every day. I've overheard, not from a bank, not from SBA, but outsiders who are talking, that they plan to have a contract with Amazon. I still don't understand how that's going to work, so that they can receive applications, and I don't know who would process them. But I heard that there are a number of possibilities. And I guess, I don't know who at SBA has the capacity to, to do that kind of work, because we do disaster law, which is very different. So I don't know, but I'm hearing all kinds of stories outside, Jeff, and you're probably hearing the same.
Jeff, are you good? You have another question? There's a couple people that have questions.
No, I'm good. Thank you, Tammy.
Okay. Chantal, Milord, I think you have a question. Chantal, do you have a question? Okay, maybe she's on mute. Tessa, you have a question for a banker?
Tamara?
Yeah, yes?
Okay, her question was keeping all employees in order to be considered for forgiveness, because she has a school. And then the employees, some of them are working from home remotely, but she wants to know how, if she can keep them, get the loan, and then keep them employed and then pay them so she can be, I guess, qualified for the forgiveness. Chantal, are you there?
Can you hear me, Paola?
Yes, okay, great. Okay, good, yes.
Okay, so my question, from my understanding, and thank you everyone for making this information available to us, small businesses, and thank you, Paola, for inviting us to this meeting. My question as a 501c3, we have a 10-month contract with our teachers. So if I apply for this, teachers employed or all the employees in order to be considered or considered for the forgiveness?
It should be for the normal portion.
Her question, I don't know if you heard it, Herbert. Her question was if she hires, I guess, rehires, or are they already your employees?
They are currently my employees. So and I believe in May, our school year ends. So at that point, I don't have need for them anymore until August when school open back. And some of them may not return and some may return. So how many of my employees do I need to retain in order to be eligible not to pay this loan back?
That's a really good question.
What do you think, banker?
Chantal, absolutely. You will be able to keep them on the payroll and have that part of the loan forgiven. So the bank, once you receive the loan, whatever you pay for payroll for the 8 weeks since you take the loan, that will be forgiven for you. Absolutely, you can connect with me on the side offline, and I can help you out with those calculations and how to plan for that.
Thank you.
Okay, we're getting towards the end of this. So we have 2 more questions, and then we'll try to kind of do a big recap. Let's see, Tessa, you had a question for the banker?
Yes, my banking institution requires a 940 for the year 2019 and a 941 for the first quarter of 2020. However, our organization uses a PEO. So we don't have 940s. We don't file those. Yeah. And so I want to know, has that been taken into consideration for banks, and what suggestions do you have for organizations that are in that similar situation?
I'll let the banker answer, but from a tax perspective, I'm an accountant, there's no forms for 2020 that are due yet. So the 941s, they're quarterly forms. The quarter just ended in March, and they're not due till late April. So I think banks should not be asking for 2020 940s or 941s.
City National is asking for it.
So,
yeah, so they should be able to take your application without that, but every bank has their own policy. If that's the case, then you may have, because you need to get your name on the queue, find another institution that is not requiring that information, because part of it as well, certain institution will just require just bank statements to support that, because ultimately we are relying on the client in their certification. That's what the number is. But again, every bank is different from that standpoint. But if that's the position of City National, I'll say just find another institution that may not require that.
And I think that since, to your point, since you're non-for-profit and you don't, you have a different form, you just need to let them know that.
Thank you.
This is Princeton. I may answer that as well. The PO, I have PO as well. So I contacted them. They provide all the information that I need. So if you contact your PO, most likely they will provide everything that you need to submit to the bank.
I did, and they're not providing it in the format that City National is requesting. So that's
Okay.
limiting that's an impediment to the process right now.
And one thing that also we have to remind the audience is it's just interim final rules. So as the SBA and Herbert is hearing from us on the ground, they will take that back, and the SBA will come back with additional guidance from the bank. So certain banks that may not allow certain things right now, they may have to change their policy under the new guidelines too.
Yeah, so it's a very fluid process. Would you not agree?
Absolutely, that's true. Yeah.
Okay, so we have somebody said, are green card holders eligible? I took the liberty of answering that. I think the answer is yes.
Yes. Yes.
And then they said employees who earn over $100,000 a year, do they get included in the equation when figuring out the annual monthly payroll?
Have to be excluded.
Well, it's up to 100, right? You take
Yes.
out you take out
99,009 or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Is there any other questions before we do a big recap?
Yes, I do have one question. This is just as a process question. I applied for the economic injury disaster loan prior to signing of the bill. And I think like maybe a day or two later, the bill was signed. Subsequently, I got an email from SBA stating that I should also, I guess, send a supplementary application for the 10,000. Now I did that, and I got two loan numbers. So my question is simply, how would their SBA? I assume they will obviously use my EIN number to merge those two applications, right? Because when I first signed, that $10,000 was not a part of the application at that point, and I assume they realized that. And for all those people who signed prior to the bill, they got an email, but they'll use my EIN number to merge those two applications?
Well, what you should have done, was to, and that's what people were required to do. When you go to that streamlined application that we have, people were asked to just go on that new application, put your reference number, and just go ahead and fill out that I like to be considered for the 10,000, but it appears as though you filed a whole new application.
No, well, the second application, what I consider supplementary application, was just like 2 pages. It just had, obviously stating, to categorize my business and ask a series of questions whether or not I would be eligible, because there's a list of things that a business that were not eligible. I answered those questions, and verification of my business information once more, EIN number, and that was it. It's submitted. All it asks that I click to accept or at least notify them that I'm interested in this $10,000 advance. That was it. I mean, it didn't go in and ask for any reference number for the previous loan or anything. but the email that I got simply said that, because you applied for the economic injury loan, we're sending this application so you have an opportunity to get an advancement.
Right.
And that was it.
Right. And you did not fill the entire application again. I mean,
no, and there wasn't even a provision for that. It just simply asks a few questions and just submit it.
So you're good, as you said, the EIN will make that, determine that. They can merge them.
Okay.
And if ever you get two loans, you just call and cancel one.
Okay. That's a good thing.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Is there any other questions before we do a recap? We appreciate the time, but we want to be respectful of Herbert's time as well and everybody else's time. Is there any other questions?
But Herbert, just a quick follow-up. Any indication as to how long before those applicants who submitted, let's say a few days or a week prior to signing the bill, do you know where they are in the pipeline?
Yeah, and my best way to explain that, so you can, as you talk to other folks, you explain them. My office has never been engaged in the disaster program. We have two SBA network. We have two organizations. One is the disaster. One is the district office. We do totally separate things. So now that they have a national disaster, the disaster office only has 4 offices. We have 68 of them. So they thought we ought to be the office marketing the program. But once you put in your application, we lose complete control. We don't ask questions either. So we don't know. But what I'm supposing is happening, that's what I tell people who call. I'm just telling, that's what I'm thinking. It may be wrong because I'm not that smart, right? So I anticipate that 22 to 24 million people will be applying. I'm anticipating that. So it goes in one office, by the way, all the application. One site, right? So I can imagine the person who puts an application Monday expecting an answer in 3 days. And it's impossible because you're just on a queue and no one has seen that application yet to be underwritten. Now people say, but I put my application, I don't get my money yet. Well, you cannot get the money when no one has seen your application. You don't exist yet. So that's the problem, I think, with this, because, we never had that. We always have disasters, a couple of tornadoes here, earthquake in other district offices, and those were more manageable. Harvey, I'll give you an idea. Harvey, which was very centralized in one location, and you had 350,000 applications just for that location. You imagine now it's the entire country. And it's the same little office who has to do all the processing. They're trying to hire people, they can't find people because of the coronavirus. So anyway, I think it's going to, what we're saying to people in a regular disaster, natural disaster, it's about 2 weeks before your application gets in the hands of a person who will look at it and spend another week on it. Now I'm saying 3 to 4 weeks before you even hear anything about the SBA. That they receive. I am in receipt of your application. I'm going to be your case worker. Your application is in the hands of so-and-so. They have 24 hours to approve it or disapprove it. So then once you start getting those calls, your application is in good hands. But now it's just you. Yeah.
And that's for the economic injury loan. That is not for the PPP.
Yes, no. The PPP, the treasurer has made it clear. I want those loans to be made in 1 day. Again, I don't see it being possible because of the volume.
Right.
But that's what they want.
Okay. All right. Well, I think this was amazing. I really, really appreciate your time. I appreciate everybody that came on. I just want to do a quick recap and then we can sign off. Again, thank you so much, Herbert. Thank you, Paola. Thank you, everybody, for coming on. Thank you, Jeff, for sharing your story of the application. So there is 2 programs. One is called the Economic Injury Loan Program. That is directly on the SBA website, sba.gov. That program allows for a loan up to $2 million per company, 3.75 interest rate for for-profit company and a 2.75 interest rate for a non-for-profit company. 30-year loan. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. This has nothing to do with the PPP program. It's a different program. The PPP program is $10 million, up to $10 million per company. You have to go to a bank. Your bank, you have to have a relationship with the bank. If you do not have a relationship with the bank, most likely you'll have to go to another financial institution. The list is on the SBA website. It's also on the Treasury website because I've looked at it on the Treasury website. That one is a 2-year maturity. 75% of it will be most likely forgiven if you use it for the intent, which is for payroll, utilities, and rent. And the one thing that I just want to repeat to make sure everybody gets this is that they're separate programs. You can apply for both. You can get money from both. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. And getting money from PPP does not prevent you or put you in a situation where you cannot apply for economic injury. They will, however, speak to each other to analyze the amount of the loan. Is that correct?
They will to see whether you're applying for the same thing on both loans.
Okay,
so if you're
right.
applying for the same thing, it's not going to work.
Okay. It won't work, but you won't be denied. They'll just talk to you and say you can't do this.
Exactly. They will tell you, the bank will say, okay, you have to deduct the amount that has already been given to you for payroll purposes. But
Right.
if you have for a separate thing, the working capital that you mentioned,
Right.
to cover the costs, that's a perfect scenario.
And the disaster and the economic injury is what everybody's referring to as the disaster loan. Is that correct?
That's it's called the economic injury disaster loan, IDA loan.
Perfect. Okay, well, I'm good. I hope this was helpful for everybody here. I really, really am grateful for you, Herbert, for taking the time on a Saturday. Thank you, Del, for chiming in as a banker. Thank you, everybody. I will try to send out this link to everybody that was on so that you can replay it, air it, whatever you want to do. I'll also, when I send out the link, I'll send out the website, the SBA website, and the Treasury website, because the Treasury website has also a lot of information. So thank you, everybody.